You're welcome to another session of the Pilot Ground Briefs. My name is Habib Wale Hussein, and in this session, we're going to be talking about a weight and balance problem. And if you're not familiar with the Pilot Ground Briefs, this is a course we designed to cover a few aviation concepts that's going to improve your aviation knowledge. So you can check the link in the description below for the full course. But for today's topic, which is the weight and balance problem we're going to be reviewing, the main concept we're going to be reviewing is the moment is equal to weight times arm and how we use that to actually do a weight and balance problem. So in the pilot ground briefs for the performance and limitations section, we basically provided a problem here in scenario one where we'll have to go through weight and balance problem to actually solve that problem. So it says you're planning a golf trip with your dad in a Cessna 172 to an airport with a soft-field landing strip located 2 hours away from your city. Your dad weighs 190 pounds and your golf bag weighs approximately 100 pounds. Your plan is to fly with full fuel tanks. Please provide a weight and balance report demonstrating this trip can be conducted safely. So usually you get scenarios like this in a Checkride where they give you a problem and you need to present with a balance solution. And also just in general, as a pilot, you do need to be able to, calculate the weight and balance for your airplane. That's why the FAA wants us to teach you guys how to do this. So for this scenario, I'm basically going to be using the POH of a Cessna 172 here. And I'm also going to be using a weight and balance data sheet like what we have here. We use this at Aero Global Aviation to calculate the weight and balance problems. So depending on what, where you're doing your training, your flight school, you probably have something similar you can use. And I'll suggest, you grab a copy of this. So if you're looking for a template to use for your weight and balance problems, you can come on here on our website. Down here, you can use that to download. If you come to the About page and you come to the resources here on our website, you can use that to get to this page here where we have our general resources and we do have a weight and balance performance sheet for you here to download. So for those of you that are studying here at Aero Global Aviation Academy, you probably already know that. That's how you download that. And if you're just watching and you need a reference sheet, feel free to download that and use for your solutions. So coming back here to the main problem here. So the idea is to use this weight and balance sheet to present our weight and balance problem. So I'm going to start going into the main concepts. Like I said, it's important for us to know that moment here is equal to weight times arm. And it's also important to pay attention to the units. So we're using weight in pounds. Obviously, you could use kilograms as well. And for our arm, we're using our arm in inches. So the next thing we're going to go over here is just go line by line to fill out the entire weight and balance problem. So we'll start with the basic empty weight. So in order to get the basic empty weight information for your aircraft, in this problem we're going to be using an aircraft that has a call sign November 978 Alpha Papa, and this is the weight and balance data for that aircraft. So if you go into the cockpit of an aircraft you're flying, usually at the back of the pilot's seat it has the weight and balance data, or it has the pilot's operating handbook and the weight and balance data. It's inside. So usually your flight school should have this copy for you available. So how do we read this sheet right here? So we'll go into a little bit more details. As you can see on this sheet here, it tells you the model of the aircraft you're flying, and it gives you a table with the weight, arm, and moment that's similar to the data card I have on the other page. So here it gives us a general idea of how the aircraft is weighed, but I want to bring your attention to this part right here, which is the basic empty weight. So here is where we get the basic empty weight information, where it actually gives us the weight of the arm and the moment. So we basically copy these numbers right here. We just put that in our weight and balance data sheet for the basic empty weight. So right here, I'll put 17.1 for my weight, and for my arm, and come back here, it's 41.641. So put that in here. And for the moment, 72,084. So I have these numbers here basically. So that's the first step right there. So just to highlight again, make sure you check the POH for the specific aircraft and get the basic empty weight from the aircraft. And always just make sure you return the POH back in the aircraft, because it always has to be in the aircraft. You cannot take it away from the aircraft. So we have that. So the next thing is the pilot and front passenger. You need to get their weight, get the arm and the moment. So coming back here to the problem we have at hand, I'll use myself in this scenario as the person flying with his dad. So the problem tells me my dad weighs 190 pounds. So right now, I just weighed myself last night. I weigh 183 pounds. So thank God I'm not too heavy. I like to think I'm not too heavy. So I'll basically just take my weight and my dad's weight. So I'm 183 pounds plus my dad is 190. So that gives me 373. So that's the weight for the pilot and the front passenger. So if you're doing yours, whoever you're flying with, if there's nobody, you just use zero. If it's just you, use just your weight here. And then the arm, so I want you to pay attention here because this is very important. We're not always going to have the arm like the one we got for the basic empty weight. So how do we get the arm for the pilot and front passenger? You basically have to come back to the POH here. And in this POH for Cessna 172, if you're flying another aircraft, it might be different, but the idea is the same. You just go to where you have a loading arrangement. And this is what the loading arrangements look like on the POH for a Cessna 172. So it gives you the CG arm for the pilot and the passenger. Here it says it's 37, but it puts a star here. So we'll come down here and read what the star says. It says the pilot or passenger center of gravity on adjustable seats position for average occupant. Numbers in parentheses indicate forward and aft limits of the occupant center of gravity range. So basically it means it could range from 34 all the way to 46, which is the forward and the aft limit for the CG range. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I'll use 37 as the arm for the pilot and passenger. So I'll put 37 in there. And to get my moment, I just use the formula that says moment is equal to weight times arm. So I'll use 373 multiplied by 37. It gives me 13,801. So that right there is my moment for the pilot and front passenger. And then I move on to the rear passenger. So for the rear passenger, for this scenario, I don't have anybody. So I'll just put 0 in there. And then if I had somebody, I'll still have to figure out the arm. So you just use the same idea. come back to the loading arrangement and look at what the arm is for the rear passengers. And here it says it's 73. It doesn't provide any note because usually the rear passenger seat is always fixed. If it's adjustable, it will give you a forward and aft limit. So it says it's 73 here, so I put 73. So for the moment, if I multiply 0 by 73, multiply anything by 0, you get 0. So basic math, right? So we come down here to the next section here, the baggage area. And on our problem here, it says we do have a golf bag. So we're going to put our golf bag in the baggage area, which weighs 100 pounds. So we already have something for our baggage area. So we'll put 100 pounds in there, baggage area. And then to get the arm, we come here to the loading page and look. It says the baggage area 1 is 95, but it also gives you a note. So let's see what the note says. It says the arms measure to the center of the areas shown. So it's basically just the center. So depending on where you place your bag, obviously, if it's more to the front, you want to use this number. If it's more to the back of the baggage area, you want to use this number. If it's just in the middle, then, you can use 95. So I'll just put my bag, just center it in the baggage area. So I'll use 95 for the arm here. Then if we multiply 95 by 100, we get 9500. So the next line says we need to calculate our zero fuel weight. So the zero fuel weight is basically, at this point, you just add everything you've gotten so far on the weight section, and you add everything you have so far on the moment section to get those two main numbers. So in order to get your arm for the zero fuel weight, you just divide the total moment divided by the total weight to get the arm for the zero fuel weight. So that's how you do that. So I'll take all these numbers and add them up here to get my total weight so far. So I get 2,204.1. And if you have your own calculator, you can just follow along just to help you understand how these calculations are being done. That way you understand the whole addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division going on. So that's pretty much what it comes down to for this weight and balance problem. It's basic math. So we do the same thing for the moment. We add all the moment on this side. We get 95,385. So that's a huge number, but don't worry. You can divide that by the total weight and you get the arm. So divide that by, and we get the arm. So the arm is 43.27 right there. So get that, and we move on to the next line, which says we need to get our fuel in pounds. So let's just pay attention here again, because this is there's a few specific things we need to review on this part. So the fuel is basically, if we come back here to the scenario, it says your plan is to fly with full fuel tanks, right? So if we come back to the pilot's operating handbook here and take a look at the specifications and try to determine what full tanks is in our aircraft. So in this aircraft, we do have about 53 gallons that we can use for full fuel tanks. So come down here and check the specifications of what we have. So it says the total fuel capacity here is 56 gallons and total usable is 53 gallons. So for the purpose of this tutorial and just with the way the aircraft is actually designed, so we'll be using 53 gallons because I'm assuming the extra 3 gallons is already accounted for in the basic empty weight of the aircraft. So we'll use 53 gallons here. So if you notice, 53 gallons is not exactly in pounds, right? So this is why it's important to pay attention here. So I'll put a note here to help you understand when you're reviewing this again that 53 gallons has to be converted into pounds. So how do you do that? So in general, 1 pound of or 1 gallon is about 6 pounds. So we're going to use the idea that 1 gallon is close to 6 pounds to calculate how much weight we need to put here. So we just multiply 53 gallons by 6 pounds. And then let's see what we get. So we get 318 pounds. So 318 pounds right there. And then the next thing is our arm. So how do we determine the arm for our fuel tanks? So basically just come here on the POH, go back to the loading arrangements and look at the fuel tanks. Let's see if it gives us anything about the station of the fuel tanks. So if you come here to the node, it says the usable fuel CG arm is located at FS 48. So 48, somewhere close to this point right here, and that's typically where the wings of the aircraft are, because the fuel tank is located in the wings, right? So we're going to be using 48 as the arm for our fuel. So wherever we encounter the fuel, we're going to use 48 as the arm of our fuel. So we just multiply 48 by 318 and we get the arm for this row right here. So it's going to be 15,264. So the next thing is the ramp weight. So what is the ramp weight? So this is why it's important to, come to your POH again and you can review the terms, the weight and balance terms. I don't remember if I said this from the beginning, but you can come here and review the weight and balance terminology. That way you know what everything means. Like it tells you what the reference datum is, it tells you what the station is, it tells you what the arm is, it tells you what the moment is. You get the idea. So I'll just come down here. It even tells you what the basic empty weight is. And then, I'll look at the maximum ramp weight here. So it says the maximum ramp weight is the maximum weight approved for ground maneuver, and it includes the weight of fuel used for start, taxi, and run up. So basically, just the fuel added to, what you already have in the aircraft, right? So basically, in order to get that, I'm just going to add the zero fuel weight, which is every weight we've had here so far, and I'll add the fuel we have on board to that to get my ramp weight. So I'm basically going to be adding 318 plus 2204.1 to get my ramp weight. So it gives me 2,522.1. And then to get the arm, just because I can't really find the arm anywhere just like that, I'd have to add up the moment as well, because I added the weight here. I to add up the moment and then divide the total moment here by the total weight to get the arm for the ramp weight. So I'll add that up and get 5,385 plus 15,264. I'll get the total moment and then divide that by the total weight here. So I get 43.8. So that's how you get the arm for the ramp weight. So if there's anything you feel you can't kind of like figure out where the arm is from, the idea is just to divide, add up your total moment for whatever section and then divide by the total weight to get the arm. So that's how you do that. And then the next thing is the start taxi and run up. So the start taxi and run up for the Cessna 172, they recommend we use about 1.4 gallons for start taxi and run up, and I'll show you where I get that number from. So if you come here to the POH and you go to the time and distance to climb table. So on this table here, it has the time, fuel, and distance to climb table. If you come down to the notes section, it tells you to add 1.4 gallons of fuel for engine, start, taxi, and takeoff allowance. So that's where I got that number from, just in case you're wondering. So come back here, and just as usual, for anything that has to do with fuel, you just can't put the gallons here. So please pay attention. Just make sure you use the conversion to get the fuel weight in pounds. So use 1.4 gallons and we'll multiply that by 6 pounds and see what we get. That gives us about 8.4. So we get 8.4 pounds, right? And as usual, you already know at this point, anytime we're doing anything that has to do with fuel, the fuel station is fixed. So the arm is 48. And then the moment, basically just multiply 8.4 by 48 to get the moment. So it gives us 403.2. And then the next thing is the takeoff weight. So the takeoff weight, how do we get the takeoff weight? So up until this point, we calculated our ramp weight and we calculated how much fuel we're going to burn to get to, the runway before we take off. So all we just need to do is subtract that, the weight for the start taxi and run up from our ramp weight to get what the weight of the aircraft is when we're about to, take off. So we just basically subtract 8.4 from 2,522. It's not a lot, but you do need to account for that to have accurate numbers. So we put that right there. And then because the takeoff weight, we do have to calculate the arm. So we basically just add up or we subtract the moment here as well. Just as we subtracted the weight here, we subtract the moment in order to get the total moment for the takeoff weight section. So we subtract that and divide by the total weight to get the arm for the takeoff weight. So if we subtract that, we get 0.245.8, and we basically just divide that by the total weight. get the arm as 43.85. Alright, so I'll just stop here for a second because this is very important. So this is the point where it's important for us to determine if we're safe to actually take off and go fly, right? So as you can see, the rest of the calculation has to do with, calculating the fuel you use and, what your weight and balance is when you're landing. So I'll get to that in a second. But before I go deeper into that, it's important to understand the takeoff information here, because this number right here, the arm for your takeoff weight, tells you where your CG location is when you're taking off. So in order to prove that your aircraft is safe to actually fly with this loading, the first thing you want to do is come to the POH and take a look at the CG envelope. So in this Cessna 172, it does have, two graphs you can use. So it gives you a CG moment envelope here, which is a center of gravity moment envelope. So with the scale we're using, we're going to be using the weight in pounds on the y-axis, and on the x-axis we're going to be using the moment, the airplane's moment. So if you notice here, it divides the moment by 1000. So it's important for you to know whatever number you have here, you have to divide that by 1000 to get where it is on this scale. So just from looking, I can see we have 110,000 here. So on this scale, we're going to be using 110, and our weight is about 2,513. So what you want to do to demonstrate that your airplane is actually safe to conduct this flight is you want to take that weight of 2,513, come on here, I'll assume it's somewhere here, and just draw a line to where it matches with that 110 right there. And then I'll take a line from 110, draw it up, and see where it matches. So I can see where it matches in here. It's within this envelope, this normal category envelope. So if I'm going to be flying in the normal category, I always have to make sure before I fly, if I do my weight and balance calculation, I have to stay within this envelope, to avoid any problems, right? So if you, go through this in your Checkride and you prove this, it means your aircraft is actually loaded correctly. So that's one way to prove that, right? So the second way to prove that is by using the other chart, which is the center of gravity limits chart here. This is for Cessna 172. If you're flying something else, you should have something similar. The idea is the same thing. So in this chart here, it uses the weight of the aircraft and uses the airplane CG location with the inches after data, right? So I like to bring your attention to this again. As you can see, it says the CG location in inches after datum, right? So this is why this is important right here, this number. So it's 43.85. So we put that number here. That is our reference number right there. And then we can use this chart to actually determine, using the inches after datum, the CG location, to determine if we're within this envelope for the normal category. So we grab about, since our weight is about 2,513, so I'll just slightly go above 2,500 on the weight here, and I come to about 43 right there, which I believe is the CG. It says 43.85, so probably a little bit closer to 44. So we'll put this there again, right there, and then I go a little bit close to 44, so 43.85, and then I just do that. So it should be somewhere here. So as you can see, it's within this envelope. So I'm safe to fly with this current weight and balance loading on the aircraft. So that's how you prove your aircraft is safe to fly, right? So the next thing now, just to finish up, you know, you do want to like finish putting in the numbers here after you've proven you're safe to fly, because you also want to determine where your CG is going to be. You also want to be able to tell if your CG moves forward or after you land. So we'll move on here and calculate the fuel used en route. And to calculate the fuel used en route, it's important to, come out here and fill out your parameters for your flight. And in order to do that, you have to be familiar with the cruise performance table. So I'll use this opportunity to introduce you to the cruise performance table. So for this aircraft, the cruise performance table has a few details that we'll probably go into a little bit of a detail about for you to understand the concept behind that. But this table right here, it gives you a lot of information that you need to know about, when you're cruising with the aircraft. So first it tells you, you need to select your pressure altitude, and then you need to select the RPM, and then it gives you three different options. And within those three different options, in terms of your temperature, you have options for your percentage of your maximum continuous power, your true airspeed, and your gallons per hour for each one. So it's the same thing here and there. So the most important things we're looking for right now is to determine, our gallons per hour, so we know how much fuel we're burning. But before we do that, we do have to make a decision on, what altitude we're flying, the RPMs we want, the power setting we want, and then, we'll get those numbers from whatever we decide, right? So for the purpose of this tutorial, I'll assume I'm flying at, well, I'll use 4,000 feet pressure altitude. And as you can see here, it gives you 20 degrees below standard temperature. It gives you a standard temperature section and 20 degrees above standard temperature. So it's important to know what the idea is with your standard temperature, because how do you know where to choose, right? So after I choose my pressure altitude at 4,000, I'll choose my RPM. So assuming I want to fly at, I'll say 2,400 RPMs right there. I basically want to come into this section now and determine which number I'm going to choose, right? So we agreed I'm going to be using this section here, but which one of these should I use? So in order to determine this, you have to look at your weather, right? So I'll use an example here. I'll come here to my flight and come here to my airport. So I'll check the weather. I can go to winds and look at what my temperature is saying. Look at my winds aloft. So assuming I'm flying at 4,000, right? So if I look at my altitude with this reporting station at this airport, it gives me different altitudes. It gives me the temperature at this altitude. It gives me the winds. I'll just focus on the temperature right now because that's what we need to determine some of these numbers. So if we're flying at 4,000, we see 4,000 is not shown here. It just goes from 3,000 to 6,000. So what I can do is, because 4,000 is closer to 3,000, I'll use the numbers associated with 3,000 for my calculations. So I come here and determine, it tells me at 3,000 feet, within this area of this airport I'm looking at, it says it's 21 degrees and ISA plus 12. So ISA is your international standard atmosphere. And as you can see, it tells you about your standard temperature here. So our international standard atmosphere is just basically telling us what, the temperature is at that altitude, what the difference is with the current temperature at that altitude and what it will be within the standard atmosphere. So if you use a full flight here, it's really easy to tell because it just gives you the number plus 12 right there. So the most important thing you need to be aware of is the standard lapse rate, because the standard lapse rate is basically for every 1,000 feet of altitude you gain, you lose about 2 degrees Celsius. So that's the idea they used to come up with the international standard atmosphere. So I'm going to just take plus 12 here and use that to determine what section I'm going to use here, my cruise performance section, right? So I have a standard atmosphere here and I have 20 degrees above standard. So my number I got for ISA is plus 12. So plus 12, it's not exactly 20 degrees above, it's just 12 degrees above. Just stay with me here. So because I'm 12 degrees above, I'm not exactly at 20 degrees above. If I was exactly at 20 degrees above, or at least closer to 20, like 18 or 19 or even 17, I'll probably use this section here. But because I'm not exactly there, I'm at 12, so 12 is a lot, I'll probably stay in the middle. So what I'm going to do for my section here is I'll basically interpolate the numbers. So for example, for my gallons per hour, to determine the gallons per hour I'll be burning, I'll take the gallons per hour on this section here, and I'll take the gallons per hour on this section and divide them by 2 to actually get what I'll have at 12 approximately, right? Plus 12. So that's the idea. So I take 8.5 plus 8.1 and divide that by 2. So I get about 8.3. So that is what I'll use here as my gallons per hour for the purpose of this flight. 8.3. So while we're doing that, I also get my notes of my true airspeed right here. So I'm using 24 right here. So it says standard temperature at 2,400 RPMs, your true airspeed will be 109 and it will be 107 with 20 degrees above standard. So what I'm going to do is I'll just interpolate between both and I'll say my true airspeed is going to be 108. And my power setting, like I said earlier, I'm going to be using 2,400 RPMs. So I'll just put 2,400 RPMs right there. And for my percentage of my brake horsepower, it's pretty much the same thing as my percentage of maximum continuous power. So I'll just come down here to my section here and I'll look at the standard and this and just basically interpolate between both to get the exact number I'm using. I'm basically using about 59%, so I'm adding 61 to 57 and just dividing by 2. So I'm using about 57% of my brake horsepower. And now that I have these numbers, it's easy for me to, calculate how much fuel I'm going to be using en route, right? So I'll just put my 53 gallons here just to make sure we have that filled out as well. So coming back here, to calculate the fuel used en route, we need to determine how much fuel we're burning per hour. So if the aircraft is burning 8.3 gallons per hour of the temperature we have within that area, we can basically come back here to our problem and determine how many hours we're flying for. So it says our destination is located 2 hours away. We're basically going to be flying for 2 hours. So if we're flying for 2 hours and the airplane burns 8.3 gallons per hour, so we just multiply 2 by 8.3 and we get how many gallons we're burning for 2 hours. So it's 16.6. So the same thing here. For burning 16.6 gallons, just be careful. You can't come and put 16.6 gallons here because the weight is in pounds. So we'll just do 16.6 gallons and multiply that by 6 pounds. So if we do that, we get the weight in pounds. So basically get 99.6 pounds. So as usual, the arm, if you're burning fuel, you're burning from the fuel station arm. So basically just use 48 as the arm, and then you just multiply 48 by 99.6 to get the moment here. So that's 9,920.16, and we have that filled out. So the next thing we do here is calculate the landing weight. So in order to get the landing weight, we basically just want to subtract the fuel we use from the takeoff weight. It's pretty logical, right? To get our landing weight. So take 2513.7, subtract that from 99.6, and we get 2,414.1 pounds. And in order to get the arm, we'll have to do some math here. So we have to calculate or subtract the moment for the takeoff weight and the fuel used. So we subtract that. And then we divide that by the landing weight to get the arm. So our arm that we get here is basically going to be our CG landing. And we divide that to 4.1. So we get 41.55. So as you can see here, our CG here, the arm is lower than this, so which means our CG actually moved forward a little bit after burning some fuel. So it's important for you to understand that concept right there. So that's pretty much how you fill out your weight and balance data. Just make sure you understand the concept of moment is equal to weight times arm, and also review the terms in the PO, or just review the weight and balance terms and make sure you understand what the basic empty weight is, what the zero fuel weight is, what the takeoff weight is, and what the landing weight is. So by going through this tutorial, I hope I've helped you understand how to do a weight and balance calculation. And coming back to our scenario here, we already proved, it's going to be safe for us to conduct the flight in terms of the parameters that was provided to us with respect to the flight. So I hope you learned something here today, and you know, leave a feedback for us, from whatever it is you've learned, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.